What kind of juvenile offender could prompt a judge to declare that the possibility of rehabilitation is slim, lead the judiciary to amend laws, and result in a firm death sentence? In 2021, such a case unfolded in Japan. A 19-year-old boy broke into a home late at night, hacked a couple to death, and then set fire to their bodies, reducing them to charcoal. His motive? Simply because he had failed to win the affection of the family's popular daughter and wanted her to live in perpetual pain. What's even more chilling is that he had another version of this horrifying plan. In the early hours of October 12, 2021, the police in Kofu City, Yamanashi Prefecture, Japan, received a report from a resident of the Hazawa residential area. The caller claimed that a burglary seemed to be taking place at the two-story house next door and urged the police to investigate. Shortly after, at the 7-Eleven store located 500 meters from the Hazawa residential area, the police received another call from two sisters. They reported that their parents had been hacked to death by a young man, and the sisters had narrowly escaped before seeking refuge in the store to call for help. Upon receiving the reports, the Japanese police immediately dispatched officers to the scene. But to their surprise, the two incidents were actually part of the same case. When they arrived, the two-story house mentioned by the first caller was engulfed in flames, with thick smoke billowing into the sky. Firefighters took about an hour and a half to extinguish the fire, but the house was completely destroyed. Afterward, the police met with the first caller. According to him, the neighboring family's surname was Ino. The household consisted of a couple in their 50s and the two young, lovely daughters. Their eldest daughter, 17, had just started high school, while the younger daughter was only 14. They were a friendly family of 4. The caller had heard loud noises from next door, including shouting and fighting, and assumed it was a burglary, prompting him to call the police. However, he was shocked when the house later caught fire. After the fire, he saw the two daughters but noticed that the Inuit couple was nowhere to be found. Later, after further investigation, the police discovered 2 bodies at the fire scene. Both showed signs of stabbing and hacking wounds. DNA tests conducted by forensic experts confirmed that the bodies were those of the murdered Inuit couple. Meanwhile, the police quickly located the 2 surviving sisters. According to the young sister, the person who killed their parents was a young man. At the time of the incident, she had been sleeping upstairs and was awakened by loud noises coming from downstairs. When she went to investigate, she witnessed the young man violently attacking her parents. Screaming for help, she turned and ran but was struck on the head by the assailant, causing her to bleed. Her screams woke her elder sister, who, without even seeing the attacker's face, immediately helped her sister escape by jumping from the 2nd-floor balcony. They narrowly avoided being pursued and ran to a 7-Eleven store 500 meters away, where they reported the incident to the staff and called the police. Through a detailed examination of the scene, the police determined that someone had intentionally set the fire by pouring lamp oil. This person was likely the young man described by the sisters. The police reviewed surveillance footage and conducted interviews with neighbors, eventually identifying the suspect as Yuki Endo, a high school classmate of the older sister, Miyoko Ino. Given the severity of the crime, the police deployed 80 officers to launch a citywide manhunt for Yuki Endo. Perhaps realizing there was no escape, at around 7 p.m. on the day of the incident, Yuki Endo, in tears, called the police from a location 30 kilometers away from the crime scene. He confessed to the murders and was taken into custody by the police. Yuki Endo was just a 19-year-old teenager. What kind of grudge could he have had against the Ino family, and why would he commit such a shocking crime. Let's rewind the club back to May 2021. Yuki Endo was attending a national high school in Kofu City. At the time, in the eyes of his teachers and classmates, he was a diligent student with excellent academic performance. Beyond that, Yuki was also the student council president. Though somewhat introverted and preferring to keep to himself, he was known as a capable and reliable assistant. This seemingly ordinary teenager developed a crush on Miyoko, a junior who had joined the student council. Miyoko was lively, beautiful, and kind. She was not only a key member of the club, but also became a student council officer. In everyone's eyes, she was the beloved and good-natured school beauty. From the moment Yuki first saw Miyoko, he was smitten. Despite his usual reluctance to socialize, he began pursuing her aggressively. He gave her gifts multiple times, but Miyoko only saw him as an ordinary classmate. She had no interest in romance and felt no attraction to him. So, she rejected Yuki's advance. However, Yuki remained undeterred, believing that more interaction would eventually lead to a relationship. He continued to pester her with gifts, invitations to dates, and birthday celebrations. He deluded himself into thinking his pursuit of Miyoko was progressing smoothly, but in reality, it only annoyed and even frightened her. After the high school culture festival in October 2021, Yuki sent Miyoko yet another confession via text. This time, she firmly rejected him again and blocked his number, refusing to respond any further. Furious at this rejection, Yuki felt his dignity had been trampled on and his sincere feelings disregarded. Resentful and vengeful, he decided to teach Miyoko a lesson for what he saw as her ingratitude. He began formulating a plan in his mind. Initially, Yuki planned to kidnap, torture, and assault Miyoko, believing this would inflict immense pain on her. To carry out this plan, he purchased tools such as pillars, a sleeping bag, and a tent. He intended to use the pillars to pull out Miyoko's nails and needles to pierce her body, all to vent his hatred. The sleeping bag and tent were meant for his escape after committing the crime. With his tools ready, Yuki moved into an abandoned house near his great-grandmother's home to avoid detection by his family. He brought food and purchased items, planning to hide there for a while before executing his plan. In the days leading up to the crime, Yuki began stalking Miyoko, waiting for the right moment to kidnap her. However, during his surveillance, he noticed Miyoko behaving intimately with what he thought was a man. This man was actually a female friend, with a more androgynous appearance, but Yuki, blinded by jealousy and anger, convinced himself that Miyoko had rejected him and cut off contact only to pursue someone else. In his mind, Miyoko had betrayed him, and she was unforgivable. To inflict even greater pain on Miyoko, Yuki decided to escalate his original plan. Not only would he kidnap, torture, and assault Miyoko, but he would also break into her home, set it on fire, and make her entire family suffer a devastating price for her actions. With this in mind, Yuki went out to purchase additional items: an axe and kitchen knife, a lighter, and kerosene. He was fully aware that carrying out this plan would leave him with no way back, but he was consumed by rage and determined to put his escalated plan into action. At 3:30 a.m. on October 12, 2021, the street was silent and everyone was asleep. Yuki sneaked into Miyoko's family's yard and found the doors and windows tightly locked. Using the tools he had prepared, he taped the window, smashed the glass with a hammer, and entered the house. Once inside, he grabbed the axe and attacked Miyoko's parents, who were sleeping in the first floor bedroom. He also used the kitchen knife to ensure they were dead. However, the noise woke Miyoko's younger sister, who then escaped with Miyoko's by jumping from the second floor. Realizing he couldn't pursue them, Yuki decided to focus on his immediate goal. He set the house on fire, completely destroying it. He then fled to a location 300 kilometers away from the Hazawa residential area. While on the run, Yuki saw news reports on TV about the police manhunt for the Kofu City arsonist and murderer. Although his photo and name hadn't been released, the details suggested the police already knew he was the perpetrator. Perhaps realizing he had no chance of escape, or recalling that he was still a minor under Japanese law, Yuki ultimately chose to turn himself in. However, the nature of his crimes was undeniably heinous. Because of his unrequited love, Yuki destroyed Miyoko's family, leaving the two sisters orphaned. Shortly after the incident, both sisters suffered from insomnia due to the trauma, and Miyoko developed post-traumatic stress disorder. She expressed her anguish, saying, "If Yuki wanted revenge, he should have killed just me. Why did he have to hurt my parents?" Her psychiatrist noted that the psychological scars would likely haunt Miyoko for the rest of her life. The perpetrator was arrested, but the sentencing posed a dilemma. At the time in Japan, the legal age of adulthood was 20, and Yuki Endo was only 19. This meant that as a minor, he would be protected under the juvenile law. Not only would he likely avoid a death sentence for intentional murder, but he might also escape criminal responsibility altogether. Additionally, due to the privacy protections for minors, the media was prohibited from disclosing Yuki's identity, photos, or other personal information. Under Japan's 2021 laws, Yuki's punishment would likely have been a few years in a juvenile detention center. After his release, he would not carry the stigma of being a murderer and could live an ordinary life. Fortunately, this time, the justice system did not fail the public. Due to the extremely cruel and premeditated nature of Yuki's crimes, which had a severe negative impact on society, Japan lowered the legal age of adulthood from 20 to 18, starting from April 1st, 2022, half a year after the incident. At the same time, Japan's juvenile law was revised, categorizing offenders aged 18 to 19 as specific juveniles. On April 8, 2022, Yuki, having committed crimes such as murder and arson, was designated as Japan's first specific juvenile. The law explicitly allows for real name prosecution and real name reporting of specific juveniles, age 18 or 19, who commit heinous crimes such as murder and rape. Consequently, Yuki was prosecuted for murder and arson, and major Japanese media outlets publicly disclosed his personal information. Following the public trial of this case, it garnered significant attention. Yuki had the right to legal defense, and his defense lawyer pleaded in court, attributing his crimes to his family background. Yuki's childhood was marked by domestic violence from his father, and his parents frequently fought in front of him, eventually divorcing when he was in the 5th grade. Yuki lived with his mother, but she later started her own family and paid less attention to him. His relationship with his stepfather was also cold. His stepfather even laughed when he saw Yuki drowning in a river. Yuki was made to live alone in a small house next door, listening to the laughter and joy of his mother, stepfather, and stepsister while eating meals by himself. The defense lawyer explained that living in such a repressive family environment for a long time made it impossible for Yuki to properly understand or express love. Deep in his memory, he could only imitate the violent behavior of adults. Therefore, the lawyer argued that Yuki Endo was in a state of mental disorder at the time of the crime, with a diminished capacity to control his actions, and thus did not deserve the death penalty. However, the prosecution was not swayed by these arguments. They maintained that the defendant had full criminal responsibility and that the mental health claims were merely excuses. They demanded the death penalty. For a time, the focus of the trial became how to determine the criminal responsibility of a minor at the time of the crime, and how to determine the appropriate sentence. Ultimately, the case reached its final verdict in January 2024. The Kofu District Court, under immense pressure, sentenced defendant Yuki Endo to death. This marked Japan's first death penalty case involving a specific juvenile. The verdict stated that Yuki's crimes were cruel and premeditated, causing severe harm to society. Additionally, he showed no remorse or offered apologies to the victims' families. The judge stated that there was little possibility of rehabilitation for the defendant. This verdict holds significant importance, not only as the first death penalty case for a specific juvenile, but also because it updated Japan's judicial precedent reference system. This groundbreaking case paves the way for future death penalty cases involving minors in Japan, deterring those who might exploit the juvenile protection law to commit heinous acts before reaching legal adulthood. At the same time, it provides reference and inspiration for the judicial systems of other countries. All nations that still retain the death penalty must, through reasonable institutional frameworks, seek a balance between fair application of punishment, addressing the emotions of victims, limiting judicial arbitrary, and protecting youth. Finally, age and family background are not excuses for criminal behavior. The law exists to better protect people's rights and regulate their conduct, not to allow those with ill intentions to exploit legal loopholes for personal gain. This is Charles bringing you crime story analysis. If you like this channel, please like, subscribe, and turn on the notification button. Have a case you want me to dig in and share? Leave a message on the comment section, and I will see you next time.